Hello and welcome to Auld Lang Smooths, the Edinburgh Jewish Cultural Centre podcast. I'm David and this is the second of three special podcasts featuring highlights from our Writers Live Writing Lives event that we held at the Southside Community Centre in February this year, 2024. The writers Eleanor Tom, Sara Sheridan and Rog Glass joined us to talk about their latest books. We also heard from Rog about Alistair Gray, the Scottish writer and artist and author of the novel Poor Things, on which the award-winning film of the same name was based. So in this episode, we'll hear extracts from Rog's conversation with Sara Sheridan and an extract from her book, The Secrets of Blythswood Square.
We're going to focus particularly on the brand new book, The Secrets of Blythswood Square. Do you want to open by just giving us a flavour of the book, and then we'll give people a little context after that?
Let's do it. I'm going to read. This book is set in Glasgow. There are little bits in Edinburgh, but I'm going to read you a bit set in Glasgow, and it's a minor character in the book. Grace Sutherland is a superstar. She is a theatre impresario in Glasgow. She's an actress and a singer. What we know about Grace is she gets her photograph taken. So much of the book is concerned with very early photography, the world of Adamson and Hill up in Rock House in Edinburgh. And Grace realises very quickly that she could have a photograph taken, and she has a number of very wealthy gentlemen admirers, and she realised this is the opportunity to make quite a bit of money. And so she puts the photograph she has taken up for auction among her gentlemen admirers. Of course she does. And this is what happens late one night when one of them tries to bite back. While Glasgow mostly sleeps, Grace Sutherland entertains late. She does not finish at the theatre till 10 after all, and glories in lighting her rooms as bright as the star she wants to be. Tonight she dines on a slab of veal that could feed a family for a week and a bottle of claret to wash it down. Then she turns her attention to the 3 missives sitting on a salver on her desk, each branded with a different seal. These are the bids for her calotype. She is about to set herself to opening them when Betty knocks. "Miss Sutherland, Mr. McIntyre's at the door," she says, casting her eyes upwards, for Miss Sutherland's gentlemen are considered trying by her staff. They make a joke of it. Donald McIntyre submitted one of the 3 envelopes with which Grace is toying. His is of thick cream paper branded with his family crest, a hand clasped round a sword in green wax. Grace lifts it between elegant fingers and consults the elaborate Clisson clock on the mantel. It is almost midnight. "I can't imagine what he wants," she says, her gaze shifting to her reflection in the mirror. "Send him up." Donald is almost 50 years of age and married to his second cousin. He is a large bear of a fellow with a tightly trimmed beard, and tonight is wearing rather flamboyant evening dress with a purple satin tie, his cloak lined in a matching shade. He has taken drink, she notes, immediately apparent as he bursts into her chamber. "Grace," he hails her, "I've been thinking." Thinking, Grace notes dryly, is not Donald McIntyre's strong point. However, she does not say this out loud. "What have you been thinking?" she asks coyly instead. "About that image of you." "Indeed. Is it the only one? I mean, are there more, Grace?" He flings himself into the chair by the fire. Grace pours him a whiskey the way she knows he prefers, with only a little water to open the flavour. "There are more," she coos. "Not the same, mind. Different." He grunts as if to say that he knew it. "I don't mind being extorted," he says, taking a sip, "but I'd like to be comprehensively extorted, if that's what it comes to." Grace perches prettily on the opposite chair, far enough away that he cannot lay his hands on her. "I don't know what you mean," she says. "If you wish to withdraw your bid, I can return it." She removes the McIntyre envelope from her décolletage, feeling satisfied that Donald lets out an involuntary gasp as she does so. He does not snatch the paper, however. "I merely seek to clarify, not to withdraw," he says. Grace sighs. "Clarify what? That you're selling one image, but that you have more?" "Yes. How many are there?" Grace chose 3 of Ellery's prints. She decides to admit this. 3, she says. "And you intend to auction the others?" "In time, of course." "I want to up my bid. I want to buy the lot, to take you off the market picture-wise, do you see?" Donald says, looking pleased with himself. Grace gets up and takes a turn around her chair. She leans over the back of it. "Oh, Donald," she says with great seriousness, "that would cost a lot of money."
Brilliant. It's good to start with the taster. Shall we go back a little bit then? And
Yeah.
Obviously, the novel's been out for a few days now, so I'm going to assume everybody has read it. But just in case there's anybody in the room that hasn't, how do you like to describe the novel? Just introducing the key.
I suppose there's lots of different ways to come to it, isn't there? So it's about the female gaze, it's about early photography in Scotland, and the two main characters are Ellery, who's a female photographer who is related to Jessie Mann, who was the assistant, Adamson and Hill's real assistant up in Rock House.
Who was in Where Are the Women?
Who was in Where Are the Women. So I created a memorial to Jessie in Where Are the Women. It is said, of course, that Jessie did much of the photographic work for them. So she had a real active part in the studio. She did a lot of the development, and she also took a great many of the pictures, or some of the pictures anyway, and a few of them we know for definite she took, but it's suspected she took more than they credited her with. And so Ellery is Jessie's cousin, and she comes into an unexpected bequest and heads off to Glasgow to set up a photographic studio in St Enoch Square, which at the time is a square with a large church in the centre and a number of grazing sheep. It's not like that today. It's her story when she comes into contact with this Glasgow heiress called Charlotte Nicholl, and Charlotte has been brought up very proper. She's been brought up in the Free Kirk, and her father dies unexpectedly, and she is left with, initially she thinks, all of his fortune, but she discovers, of course, that he has left a number of secret bequests. And these are the secrets of Blythswood Square. What was her father really like, and what did she find out about him? And one of the things she finds out, which you will discover very early in the book if you read it, is that he had an inconvenient collection of erotic art. And poor Charlotte, she just does not know what to do about this art. She has to get rid of it.
The moment where she finds it is fantastic. You just feel she's in absolute panic. First of all, she doesn't know what she's looking at.
Yes. And then and that's the male gaze, of course, in the terms of the book. So you have Ellery, who has the female gaze, and Charlotte has the male gaze, and owns the male gaze. And then, of course, Ellery is able, through the agency of various other characters, to help Charlotte with her terrible problem, which is how does she get rid of these paintings and statues and lithographic prints, French lithographic prints, of course. They can't be British. So, that's really the story of the book.
Okay, so why don't we start with photography then? And I love the way you put these notes in the back of the book that kind of explored the research, the kinds of ideas and things that you're interested in. But at one point you write that we live in a world that is saturated in photographic images. Of course, isn't there some crazy stat like the amount of photographs that have been taken on planet Earth in the last year is more than the whole of human history put together before then? So my question is, how does that apply a pressure to writing a novel about the early days of the photographic image? How does the world that we're living in impact on the world that you're showing us, do you feel, as a writer?
The whole historical novel thing, for me, a good historical novel is a time machine.
Yeah.
And it has the capacity to give you the access to where you come from. So this book is about where we come from. It's about what the world was like, and what have we carried forward actually from that world. And so photography was hugely exciting when it was first invented. It's also hugely expensive. So the only people that have access to photography or taking photographs at the very beginning in the 1840s are very rich white guys. That's it. And so you don't even see female photographers until at least 10 years after the male photographers have had a go. And even then, it's the posh white women that then get their hands on the cameras. So seeing these early images, there's like a line in the sand in the archive, the most extraordinary line in the sand in the archive, where it's sort of pre-photographic material. And so when I wrote The Fair Botanist, all of that material was, plans, engravings, paintings, all of that kind of stuff, but there's no photographs.
Is that about 20, 25 years earlier?
Yeah, 25 years, 20, maybe 21 or 22, and then you see these photographs and suddenly you can see things as they were. They're not really being interpreted for you, and it's so exciting in the archive. It's like a line in the sand that you cross over, and you can see that, you know, somebody wore a stupid hat, and you know what somebody had on the wall behind them, or the kind of plants that were about, or a landscape, you know, that the roof of the house is falling in, or, you know, you can see all of that stuff for real. So I suppose it's about where our image of ourself comes from, our, you know, body positivity, because what's sexy, you know, the funniest thing, this has gone up obviously on Amazon. I think it was number 9 in erotic fiction. And I messaged my editor and I said, they're going to be so disappointed. You have to get in touch with Amazon immediately, because of course it's just the paintings. Somebody's caught that these are the paintings that are. So yeah, that it's gone to this, and I know there's a whole load of readers out there now who are going to be like, well, this is a completely rubbish erotic novel, but it's just these paintings that are part of it.
I think you're going to get through the first few chapters.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe there's a different reading of the first few chapters.
I don't know.
It's erotic, I don't know.
Maybe we should do a special edition. I'm not saying. Anyway, one way or another. Yeah, so, sorry, I've lost the track of where I was
asking about how the fact that we live in the world so saturated in photography now,
yes.
How does that apply pressure to a novel that is about this world where it's brand new and exciting, but most people didn't have access to.
And there's a whole load of stuff around body positivity and what you want to look like and what's fitting for somebody to wear, or the way that they present themselves. So in one of the minor characters in the book, because I love an ensemble cast, anyone who's read The Fair Botanist knows I love a romp and an ensemble cast, and one of my ensemble characters in The Secrets of Blythswood Square is a young maid called Plain Jane Ramsey. And Plain Jane Ramsey is effectively Kate Moss. She's like a supermodel. She looks like nothing. She's the maid. She's the drudge. And then she steps in front of the camera so they can check the light. And before you know it, the room stops, the world stops when she poses. And so one of Ellery's first pictures she takes is a picture of Plain Jane Ramsey, hold on to your hats, showing her ankle. And this is very shocking in 1846, right? This is as shocking today as if somebody took their top off today. We're much more concerned with boobs these days than we are with ankles. Totally the other way around in 1846. And of course they print these images and they start to sell them. They have a go-between called Jeremiah Cato, who's a fabulous gay man who lives in Glasgow, and he's from the Highlands. And this is something else that I love playing around with in these stories, is taking somebody who should have one story, because of course we all look at that main line of history. So the main line of history about the Highlanders who got cleared is they were all miserable. They all came down to Glasgow and they were poor, and they spoke Gaelic and they didn't understand English, and it was awful. And the truth is, for many Highlanders that came down, that is the case. But it's never for all the people, is it? That the main line of history is never all the people. And so Jeremiah felt very lonely on the croft. He's a gay man. He thought he was the only gay guy ever in the history of the whole world. There was definitely something wrong with him. And he comes down to Glasgow and he's super handsome. He finds there are a number of gentlemen who are very interested in him. He gets a job in the theatre, and latterly he becomes basically a stylist in Ellery's studio, and also becomes their go-between, because Jeremiah can go to the cockfight and the dogfight and the bare-knuckle boxing and sell these racy prints of Plain Jane Ramsey showing her ankle in the most shocking way.
The Secrets of Blythswood Square by Sara Sheridan is published by Hodder and Stoughton. Our Writers Live Writing Lives event was made possible with funding from Scottish Book Trust's Live Literature Fund and the Netherley and Clarkson Charitable Trust. In the next episode, I'll be talking to Rog Glass about his biography of Alasdair Gray. You have been listening to the Edinburgh Jewish Cultural Centre podcast. The podcast was produced and presented by David Ian Neville with original music by Phil Alexander. If you want to sign up to the Cultural Centre's newsletter and keep up with events online and live, go to our website at www.jcc.scot.